I don't want to sound really negative or bitter, but I also want to be brutally honest. You see people prioritize other things in their mental health. It can make you feel like that you have to be the same way or that you have to be built that way in order to be successful. Each season of life is going to require you to be a different version of yourself. It may require you to push yourself a little bit more depending on where you want to go. It's something that I think over the years there's been more conversation and more awareness around the importance of mental health and trying to take care of yourself. I think we live in a time right now, especially with social media, where it's being pushed more than ever to acknowledge your mental health and to check in with yourself. I think hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new, my name is Icie and I'm so happy to have you here. And today I am filming a video in my Chats with Icie series. This is a series that I started in the beginning of my channel where I talk about a specific topic that I'm going through or that I'm really passionate about, just things that I want to start a conversation around and have a moment to connect with you guys in a little bit more of an intimate setting than doing so in a vlog. And I'm really excited for today's topic because it's definitely something that has been on my mind. I haven't posted a video in this series in such a long time just because with work and life, it's been a little bit harder to find time to just sit down and talk to the camera. And I always feel like doing these kind of more intimate, chatty videos is like a therapy check-in for myself. And so I feel like I have to be in a really good mental and emotional space to start these conversations once I've had time to process how I feel and really sit with myself. But today's topic that I wanted to go into is how to navigate mental health in the workspace or in specifically a high pressure environment. This is something that I have wanted to do a video on for a really long time, being that I work for a law firm which can feel very high pressure, and I've definitely talked about mental health in a lot of my vlogs if you have watched them, but I've never specifically talked about like what I do to manage my mental health. And part of the reason that I haven't gone into that is one, because I feel like I am still continuing to learn about my mental health as it relates to my work, and I'm still trying to find healthy coping mechanisms when I'm going through a really stressful time. And also because I don't want to talk about something where I know it can be a little bit more sensitive for people, because everyone's mental health experience is so uniquely different depending on their situation and their past experiences. But for me, I just wanted to start this video and talk about it because I feel like this can maybe help someone who is working for a law firm, or not even in a law firm, but just any job where it can just be very stressful and you know, can't seem to catch a break sometimes, or it's really overwhelming. And I wanted to shed light on a little bit of the habits and the things that I do to healthily manage my mental health. The first thing that I wanted to start with in this video is first and foremost to say that mental health is, I think, something that we are all aware of. It's something that I think over the years there's been more conversation and more awareness around the importance of mental health and trying to take care of yourself. I think we live in a time right now, especially with social media, where it's being pushed more than ever to acknowledge your mental health and to check in with yourself. Perhaps maybe in my parents' generation or in other generations, I feel like mental health just wasn't talked about as much, or at least if it was a very taboo topic or something that was brushed under the rug a lot. There is so much information and there is so much, access to how other people deal with mental health. This goes without saying, but I am not a licensed professional by any means. I'm not a doctor. This type of video is not meant to replace any professional or medical help. If this is something that you are seriously struggling with, I myself have gone to therapy, but I just thought that it was important to say that. I think we are living in a time now where we can have conversations about it, whether it's through YouTube or, through Instagram or whatever social media platform there is. With all of that information, I think it can be really confusing and just really hard to figure out a method that works for you. I think the first thing when dealing with mental health in the workplace is to tell yourself that you are not weak for feeling this way. There's nothing wrong with you for having bad mental health days when it comes to work, especially if you're dealing in an environment that people are prone or that you can be made more susceptible to things like stress and anxiety. Obviously working for a law firm, but also I feel like maybe if you're in the medical industry or whatever industry, there's nothing wrong with you for struggling with your mental health. Like, you're literally human, and these are all human feelings, even if some people don't express it as much or vocalize it. I think to some degree everyone struggles a little bit with their own mental health, and I think it's totally natural that that also happens in an industry or a field that is very high pressure. I can just say for myself, in the legal industry, there's definitely sometimes a culture of like, that's just how it is, and it can almost make you feel like, I don't want to sound really negative or bitter, but I also want to be brutally honest with how my experience has been or how it can feel. And I think what I'm trying to say is that sometimes there is definitely a feeling of just deal with it, or this is just how it's supposed to be. Whether or not that's true, I think it's just easy to feel like when you are surrounded by people who are workaholics, or who, you see that they will sacrifice their own health, whether it's physical or mental, in order to get the job done or to get ahead in whatever they're doing. You see people prioritize other things in their mental health. It can make you feel like that you have to be the same way, or that you have to be built that way in order to be successful. I think something else too that is very common in the legal industry when in terms of mental health is it's easy to compare your capacity for things and compare it to someone else, and to feel like, well, so-and-so, is taking on this amount of work, or so-and-so isn't complaining about this, so I should be like that. And it's such a fine line, because I definitely can empathize, and I am always advocating people to put their best foot forward, especially if you want to excel in your career or at a law firm, which is a topic for a separate time. We can talk about how to grow at a law firm, how to get promoted, those things are all, great and amazing things to aspire for. But I think at the end of the day, what good do any of those things bring if you yourself are not taking care of yourself, or your mental health is declining? And that's something that I've really had to confront these past few months, being in a lead position where the responsibility can really feel like it falls on you, and that there's no such thing as taking days off, because you feel like if you take a day off, you will get behind on work, or you're letting people down. Definitely struggled with those feelings, and it's taken me a really, really long time to relinquish control over certain aspects of my role and understand that it is a job at the end of the day, and no job or position should ever make me sacrifice my mental health or my own well-being to the point that I am living with anxiety or living with stress every day or not just enjoying my life. And there was definitely a period not too long ago where work really did consume me, and it became my entire existence. It became how I valued myself, and it affected my interpersonal relationships and my perception of myself and my self-confidence. And that's the whole reason that I wanted to have this conversation today about mental health, because I do feel like, as much as we love to talk about how to grow in your career and how to excel and, you know, how to do a good job or how to be a great legal assistant, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with wanting to aspire for those things. Like I said, coming from someone who is ambitious and type A herself, I think, however, within that pursuit of wanting to grow in your career, we can definitely lose sight of what really is important outside of work, and it's just so easy to get consumed by it. I think in the corporate world, it's interesting because you have all of these people who are putting on, you know, their most professional, brave faces when they come to work, but you have no idea what they're struggling with behind closed doors, or what they're even internally struggling with as you sit next to them in the office. Just coming from personal experience, where I know people who may not be as close to me, or maybe I'm not as close to them, you know, the situation can go both ways, where probably some people didn't really know how much I was struggling mentally, you know, if they were to look at my performance or, you know, solely on their interactions with me in the office. They probably had no idea what I was really struggling with. And I'm sure the same can be said in the reverse situation, where there's people who I may perceive that they have everything together, or that they seem like they just take on the stress of working at a law firm and handle it so much more gracefully than I do. And I can compare my experience to theirs, but at the end of the day, we really don't know what anyone is struggling with unless we take that opportunity to ask them how they're really doing, or we have that type of relationship with them. That's another thing to keep in mind when we're dealing and talking about mental health in the legal industry and workspace, that to not compare your experience to someone else's. I know it's so easy to do that, but for your sake, and also just to become better with managing it, I think try to, as much as possible, not to compare it. And I think boundaries are also really important when we're talking about mental health. There is this fine line in the legal industry, and I think, again, in the workplace in general, because I want to keep this topic as relatable and applicable to other people who may not work specifically in the legal industry, but just in a stressful environment in general. There is a fine line between, I think, wanting to do really well and excel and take on more work and take the initiative and be that yes person and not say no to certain projects. There is sometimes this pressure to not want to say no to things or say no to certain people because you don't want that to look negatively upon you, or you don't want to be labeled as someone who can't take extra work or who complains too much. But I think there is such a thing as creating healthy boundaries, because if there is truly a situation where you know you are swamped and you are overwhelmed, it is completely within your right, and I think it actually says a lot about you as an employee and as a person to respectfully decline tasks and say, you know what, I'm so sorry, but at this time I don't have capacity for this thing. Obviously you can tailor that to whatever situation that you have, or, you know, use different language depending on who you're talking to. And as someone who is such a people pleaser, it can feel really uncomfortable, and you can guilt yourself a lot on telling people no or comparing your workload to someone else who is able to take that work. But at the end of the day, you know, you are your own person. No one else knows what you are going through or what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis than you. Also, to be completely frank, it's just not sustainable to go at a capacity where you are constantly saying yes to things and sacrificing your own mental health, or, you know, by taking on more projects, you are living with anxiety and not taking care of yourself as soon as you leave the office. I think for a long time I thought there was never going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, and I didn't really know where to turn to because I felt like there wasn't anyone who could really understand how I was feeling. And I think that's a very common thing when you are dealing with mental health in general, is that it can feel extremely isolating. But one thing that I also encourage is talking to someone. You don't have to talk to a therapist necessarily, but just having one person or two people that you can vent to and get these emotions out, I think is really important. I genuinely don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my boyfriend during certain moments to get me through some really hard times, or even some of my closest best friends, even though I wasn't talking to them every single day about the type of problems that I was going through at work, just being able to vent to them when we did meet up. I'm just so grateful to have friends that allowed me to vent and talk about those types of issues. Even if it wasn't every day that I was in communication with them, they still gave me that safe space to decompress and just kind of be like, this is what I'm going through and this is how I'm feeling. Even if they didn't have all of the answers in the moment, or they couldn't take away my problems or what I would have to face that next day, it was extremely beneficial and crucial to my own sanity, looking back in hindsight, that they were just there for me. And so I really encourage you to find someone that you could lean on. And I understand as well that to even have a support system is a privilege, and I want to be mindful of those of you who genuinely feel like you don't have anyone in your personal life, and that can feel extremely isolating and hard. But I also encourage you to look at other resources. Maybe there's no people online that, even if you don't know them directly, they're going through something that you can resonate with or that you can take something away from. That's why I created my channel and why I talk about my experience as a legal assistant and the things that I go through, because I know that by talking about it, it helps other people feel less alone in their thoughts and their anxieties, whether it's with mental health, a legal assistant journey, or whatever it may be. When you watch my videos that you can relate to, I know that it helps someone out there. I think the other thing that has helped me a lot as well is, just as much as I can, being able to connect with hobbies and activities outside of work, even if it's one thing. You know, for me, that has always been my creativity, and YouTube more specifically within the past few years. It's been my way to channel how I feel. It's given me something to work towards and be proud of that is not specifically tied to any type of economic value or market value in terms of the workforce. Like, it's purely just for me, and it gives me fulfillment through connecting with my audience. And maybe for you that could be painting, or maybe for you that could be, you know, working on cars, or it could be, you know, studying a language that really interests you. It can really be anything. I just really encourage you, when you are going through really harder or busy seasons in life, specifically at work, just to find one hobby that is meant just for you. I was talking to my trainer not too long ago about how meditation can take on various forms, and even when you are in a flow state by doing something that makes you lose sense of time, whether, you know, that be painting or writing or reading, in a lot of ways that is a form of meditation, because it's pulling you into that present moment and it's making you live more presently versus getting in your head and living with the anxieties or fears that you have. And I really liked the way that he phrased that your hobbies and your passions are a form of meditation in a way. Apologies guys, my camera overheated and I needed to let it cool down, but I hope it doesn't die on me again. But anyway, what I was saying is that it's so important to find activities, and even if it's just one hobby, that brings you a sense of relief and allows you to decompress from work, I think it's important. I don't think it's realistic if you're working full-time to have like 5 different hobbies and tell yourself that you're gonna do this and that, but just choose one thing. Choose one thing that is just for yourself that you can do. It doesn't have to be something very time consuming, but it's just something that will allow you to remember who you are outside of those 4 office walls, or who you are outside of your work and your title and your position. And I think it's a great way to humble you and to remind yourself of your value that isn't tied to your career. And I know that's a really hard thing to do and it takes practice, but you know, I have found that that has just made me a much happier person, not only in my own life, but a much more happier person to be around, to the people that I love. And that has just been such a game changer for me, and just leaning on my creativity for sure has given me a space to take a break from everything else. Each season of life is going to require you to be a different version of yourself. It may require you to push yourself a little bit more depending on where you want to go. If you want to get a promotion, then how you're going to be is going to be different from maybe where you're at a place where things are good and you want to, you know, focus more on other projects that aren't related to your career or other passions. And that's totally fine. This video isn't meant to say that a perfect work-life balance doesn't exist, but it's just to encourage you that during the moments where you are having, you know, harder mental health weeks at work, that it is okay to take a step back and manage your capacity a little bit and manage your energy to where you can take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to take care of you besides you. And that's a really harsh reality and pill to swallow, but it's so true that, you know, your work is not going to care as much about how you are doing versus you. And so that job, you know, and responsibility isn't on them necessarily, but I just want to let you know that at the end of the day, you have control and you have agency over your own mental health. And if that requires you to step back a little bit or say no to things temporarily just to get in a better place, then I can be that person to tell you that it's okay, and I don't mind being that person. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this Chats with Icie video. If there are any other topics that you want me to talk about or go into, please let me know and comment down below. And for any of you who are going through a really stressful or overwhelming time with work, trust me, it does get better, and you know, there is hope out there. Don't give up on yourself. Keep trying, keep your head up high, and just know that things do get better and that there are other resources and ways to manage your mental health. And I am always here to support you guys. With that said, I will see you guys very soon in another video.